The name Gilgal echoes from ancient times. It is a word whispered down through millennia. This name appears many times in the Hebrew Bible. It tells a story of a people and their journey. Gilgal was not just one single static place. It was a concept, a memory, a series of locations holding deep meaning. For the ancient Israelites, Gilgal represented beginnings, covenants, and divine encounters. It was a place where the sacred touched the earth, where human history and spiritual destiny intertwined. Gilgal was a place of profound religious importance. It served as a sanctuary, a place where crucial rituals were performed. Imagine a people stepping into a new land full of hope and uncertainty. Gilgal was where they first marked their presence, not with grand palaces but with simple stones and acts of faith. It was a site for remembering pivotal events, ensuring that future generations would not forget their past. Beyond its spiritual role, Gilgal also functioned as a practical location. It was a strategic camp, a military base of operations. From Gilgal, leaders planned and launched campaigns. The story of Gilgal often begins at the edge of a river, the Jordan River. For the Israelites, this was a formidable barrier. It separated them from Canaan, the land they believed was promised to them. They had wandered for 40 years in the wilderness. Now they stood at the threshold of a new chapter. The waters of the Jordan were typically strong and full, especially during the spring flood season, which is when they arrived. Crossing it was not a simple task. According to the biblical narrative, a miracle occurred. As the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant stepped into the river, the waters parted. The flow from upstream stopped, piling up in a heap far away. The downstream waters continued to flow into the Dead Sea, leaving a dry path for the entire nation to cross. This event was profoundly symbolic. It echoed an earlier miracle, the parting of the Red Sea when their ancestors fled Egypt. It was a sign of divine favor, a confirmation that their journey was guided. This crossing was not just a physical passage from one bank to another, it was a spiritual transition, marking the end of their wanderings and the beginning of their settlement. God then commanded Joshua, their leader, to perform a specific act. One man from each of the 12 tribes of Israel was to take a large stone from the middle of the Jordan River. Once across the Jordan, Gilgal became more than just a memorial of a miraculous event. It transformed into a site of profound spiritual renewal and rededication for the Israelite people. They had entered the land, but they also needed to reaffirm their identity and their covenant with their God. One of the first significant acts performed at Gilgal was the mass circumcision of the Israelite men. This ritual was a fundamental sign of the covenant established with Abraham, their forefather. It had been neglected during the long years of wandering in the wilderness. Now, on the soil of the Promised Land, it was time to restore this essential practice. The act of circumcision at Gilgal was a deeply symbolic gesture. It marked the new generation, those born in the desert, as full members of the covenant community. It was a physical sign etched onto their bodies, a constant reminder of their unique relationship with the divine. This collective act signified a purification, a preparation for the challenges and responsibilities that lay ahead in conquering and settling Canaan. It was a statement that they were entering this new phase of their history not just as a group of people but as a people bound by a sacred pact. Gilgal, therefore, was the place where this covenant was visibly and physically renewed, solidifying their commitment before they moved further into the land. Gilgal was the Israelites' very first encampment after they crossed the Jordan River. It was their initial foothold in the land of Canaan. Strategically, its location was significant. The Bible places it on the eastern border of Jericho. This proximity to Jericho, a major fortified Canaanite city, meant that Gilgal was situated in a crucial, contested area. It was not a remote, hidden spot, but rather a forward position, a statement of intent. Establishing a camp here was a bold move, signaling their arrival and their determination to stay. This first settlement became the nucleus from which their subsequent activities in Canaan would radiate. The camp at Gilgal served multiple purposes. It was, first and foremost, a place of dwelling for the entire nation, men, women, children, and their livestock. Imagine a vast city of tents, bustling with life yet organized and purposeful. It provided a measure of security in an unfamiliar and potentially hostile territory. Here they could regroup, plan, and prepare for the challenges ahead. With the Israelites established at Gilgal, the site quickly evolved into a crucial military headquarters. It was from this strategic encampment that Joshua, their commander, launched the initial campaigns for the conquest of Canaan. The proximity to Jericho made that heavily fortified city the first obvious target. The famous story of the Battle of Jericho, with the trumpets and the collapsing walls, began with preparations and divine instructions received at Gilgal. The soldiers would march out from Gilgal, engage in battle, and then often return to this base camp. This pattern highlights Gilgal's importance as a secure rear area and a forward operating base. Gilgal was not merely a place to house soldiers, it was the nerve center for the entire conquest effort. It was here that spoils from conquered cities were brought. It was here that Joshua and the elders made critical decisions about subsequent military targets and strategies. The division of the land among the tribes, a complex and lengthy process, also had its roots in the activities coordinated from Gilgal. The presence of the tabernacle, the portable sanctuary, at or near Gilgal during this period further underscored its significance. Military campaigns were often seen as holy wars, undertaken with divine sanction and guidance, making the spiritual heart of the nation integral to its military endeavors. The strategic advantages of Gilgal's location in the Jordan Valley, near Jericho, cannot be overstated. It provided access to water from the Jordan River and a relatively flat terrain suitable for a large encampment. As Israel transitioned from a loose confederation of tribes led by judges to a more centralized monarchy, Gilgal continued to play a significant role. Its historical and spiritual importance made it a natural location for pivotal events during this period of political transformation. The prophet Samuel, a towering figure who bridged the era of the judges and the rise of the kingship, is closely associated with Gilgal. The Bible records that Samuel included Gilgal in his yearly circuit, traveling to Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah to judge Israel. This indicates that Gilgal retained its status as a place of assembly, justice, and religious authority. One of the most momentous events at Gilgal during this time was the coronation, or perhaps a public affirmation, of Saul as the first king of Israel. After Saul had demonstrated his leadership by rescuing the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead, Samuel summoned the people to Gilgal. There, they made Saul king before the Lord. This ceremony at Gilgal, a place already steeped in foundational memories of entering the Promised Land and covenant renewal, lent legitimacy and divine sanction to the newly established monarchy. It was a powerful statement linking the new institution of kingship to Israel's sacred past and its covenant with God. However, Gilgal also became the scene of Saul's first major misstep, an act of disobedience that would ultimately contribute to his downfall. Before a critical battle against the Philistines, Saul was instructed by Samuel to wait 7 days at Gilgal for the prophet to arrive and offer sacrifices. Impatient and fearing his army would desert him, Saul took it upon himself to offer the burnt offering. Samuel arrived just as Saul finished, and he rebuked the king sternly, declaring that his kingdom would not endure because he had not kept the Lord's command. Despite its glorious past, Gilgal fell into disrepute. Religious practices at Gilgal became corrupted. It became associated with insincere rituals and idolatry. Prophets like Hosea and Amos condemned these practices. Hosea lamented, "All their wickedness is in Gilgal." Amos sarcastically urged, "Go to Gilgal and multiply transgression." They highlighted the emptiness of rituals without justice. Gilgal's transformation symbolized spiritual decay and hypocrisy. The quest to pinpoint the exact location of the biblical Gilgal presents a fascinating challenge for modern archaeologists. Gilgal likely means circle of stones, applied to several sites in ancient Israel. The primary Gilgal is believed to be in the Jordan Valley, east of Jericho. Shifting landscapes and lack of monumental ruins make identification difficult. The sands of time obscure even significant places. Several sites near Jericho have been proposed as Joshua's Gilgal. Excavations at various tells have not yielded universally accepted proof. Gilgal's nature as an encampment means it might not have left substantial remains. The search relies on interpreting subtle clues and aligning findings with biblical descriptions. Discoveries of foot-shaped enclosures in the Jordan Valley are intriguing. Professor Adam Zertal identified several such sites, dating them to the early Israelite period. These foot-shaped structures are highly suggestive when considering biblical language. Zertal proposed that these enclosures could be the Gilgals mentioned in the Bible. The ancient site of Gilgal is believed to be in the West Bank, an area with a complex modern history. The primary candidate is Khirbet el-Mefjir, near Jericho. Exploration of Gilgal is intertwined with the region's political and cultural dynamics. The layers of history here continue to accumulate, influencing access and research. Gilgal remains a place of immense religious and historical significance. Jewish tradition reveres it as the site of the Israelites' first foothold in the Promised Land. Christian pilgrims and scholars also recognize its importance in biblical history. The stories of Gilgal continue to be read, studied, and reflected upon by millions. Its legacy endures far beyond any physical stones that may or may not remain. The archaeological pursuit of Gilgal contributes to understanding early Israelite settlement patterns. These discoveries add tangible dimensions to the biblical texts. History is embedded in the land itself, waiting to be uncovered and interpreted. The search for Gilgal connects us with the distant past and enduring traditions. Gilgal holds a powerful symbolic weight,